started a new recording. We're doing a new book. We're putting away Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Thank you, Thank you, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, for your service. We'll be reading A Princess of Mars. So I mentioned that. Let's flip the poster over. Okay, we can't have this poster. A Princess of Mars. Here we go. Okay, there's the original poster. Oh, I didn't have the. All right, I guess I didn't. I don't edit the posters. I guess that's fine. That's fine. We have. Oh, it's the thumbnails I do funky things for. Yeah, I put my face on the thumbnail. I'm always happy when I can do that. Reading book. Okay, let's go get the new book. All right, here we go. A Princess of Mars, first edition. Always, quite often. I think always a first edition. Really hard to find on Wikipedia. Yes. Okay, now we'll go to. I gotta go find. Okay, we can close this page. I have a lot of tabs open in this browser window. Allow me to close some of them. I have never read, or I'm not terribly familiar with A Princess from Mars, so this will be very new to me. My wife tells me it's sci-fi-y, which is, a good thing. We like sci-fi-y. Okay, here. Gutenberg Press, A Princess of Mars. This one is a fairly chunky, this is a 52,000 word book. So it's a fairly chunky one. For context, Dr. Jekyll is like 13,500 words. So that was 2 streams. So that's no. Yeah, no, it's about a full stream, right? Because we're 8:30, 8:40 now. Yeah, and that was basically 2 half streams, I guess. Very different. So recorded in the past that I read about 25,000 words per 4-hour stream, and that's kind of not jiving there, but there you go. There. Words. I am going to skip the forward. I am going to... Oh, okay, it went back to 100%. I always need to increase the zoom here to like 200%, or I can't read anything. We will start on chapter 1, though. All right, now, let me double check my videos folder. Right, okay, I have 2 videos for the 23rd. That makes me happy. So I'm doing a lot of things, and my brain's like, stream details, right? Let's change the title of the stream. Where's my book thing? Read and react for A Princess of Mars. Okay. By Edgar Rice Burroughs. We need to get rid of that tag. Do we have like... Oh yeah, no, that's A Princess of Mars. I only put in 5 letters. Oh, excuse me. Okay, tags are updated, titles updated. I think we're good. I think we are good to get started. Yes. Any questions from the class? The visitors in the libraries? None. Good. Excellent. Hopefully everyone's asleep. Yes. Sleepy times. Okay. A Princess from Mars, Chapter 1, on the Arizona Hills. I am a very old man. Of course, doxing me. How old, I do not know. Yep, confirmed. That is an old man. Hello, Arashi. Sidoen. I am so Sidoen. Sidoen. You got all the names. Just you forgot Sidious. You also do Sidious. Sometimes spelled with the C. Yeah. You've arrived just in time for the beginning of our second book today. We finished Dr. Jekyll and we're starting A Princess from Mars. I have no idea if anyone's familiar with it, but by the time I finish reading it, we're all going to have heard it at least once. Yes. All right. I am a very old man. How old, I do not know. Possibly I am 100, possibly more. But I cannot tell because I have never aged as other men, nor do I remember any childhood. So far as I can recollect, I have always been a man of about 30. Oh, you bastard. I hate this person with a passion. I'm so jealous. I appear today as I did 40 years ago and more. 40 years and more ago, and yet I feel that I cannot go on living forever. That someday I shall die the real death from which there is no resurrection. I do not know why I should fear death. I who have died twice and am still alive, but yet I have the same horror of it as you who have never died. And it is because of this terror of death, I believe, that I am so convinced of my immortality. And because of this conviction, I have determined to write down the story of the interesting periods of my life and of my death. I cannot explain the phenomena. I can only set down here in the words of an ordinary soldier of fortune a chronicle of the strange events that befell me during the 10 years that my dead body lay undiscovered in an Arizona cave. I have never told this story, nor shall mortal man see this manuscript until after I have passed over for eternity. I know that the average human mind will not believe what it cannot grasp, and so I do not purpose being pilloried by the public, the pulpit, and the press, and held up as a colossal liar when I am but telling the simple truths, which some days science will substantiate. Possibly the suggestions which I gained upon Mars and the knowledge which I can set down in this chronicle will aid in an earlier understanding of the mysteries of our sister planet. Mysteries to you, but no longer mysteries to me. My name is John Carter. What was the name of the guy in Terminator? The leader of the revolution? That wasn't John Carter, was it? Characters from Terminator. Good Lord, this is okay. Carter. Okay, no, I don't think so. Connor. It's John Connor. There's not Carter. Okay. Ever since, like, we've started doing these books, my brain's occasionally been trying to find associations between, like modern fiction or media and all these basically historical pieces that we're reading, right? Sorry. Anyways, my name is John Carter. I am better known as Captain Jack Carter of Virginia. At the close of the Civil War, hopefully there's only ever one Civil War. I found myself possessed of several $100,000 Confederate, and a captain's commission in the cavalry arm of an army which no longer existed, the servant of a state which had vanished with the hopes of the South. Masterless, penniless, and with my only means of livelihood, fighting, gone, I determined to work my way to the southwest and attempt to retrieve my fallen fortunes in a search for gold. I spent nearly a year prospecting in company with another Confederate officer, Captain James K. Powell of Richmond. We were extremely fortunate, for late in the winter of 1865, after many hardships and privations, we located the most remarkable gold-bearing quartz vein that our wildest dreams had ever pictured. Powell, who was a mining engineer by education, stated that we had uncovered over $1 million worth of ore in a trifle over 3 months. As our equipment was crude in the extreme, we decided that one of us must return to civilization, purchase the necessary machinery, and return with a sufficient force of men properly to work the mine. As Powell was familiar with the country, as well as with the mechanical requirements of mining, we determined that it would be best for him to make the trip. It was agreed that I would hold down our claim against the remote possibility of its being jumped by some wandering prospector. On March 3, 1866, Powell and I packed his provisions on 2 of our burros, and bidding me goodbye, he mounted his horse and started down the mountainside toward the valley, across which led the first stage of his journey. The morning of Powell's departure was, like nearly all Arizona mornings, clear and beautiful. I could see him and his little pack animals picking their way down the mountainside toward the valley, and all during the morning I would catch occasional glimpses of them as they topped a hog back or came out upon a level plateau. My last sight of Powell was about 3 in the afternoon as he entered the shadows of the range on the opposite side of the valley. Some half-hour later, I happened to glance casually across the valley and was much surprised to note 3 little dots in about the same place I had last seen my friend and his 2 pack animals. I am not given to needless worrying, but the more I tried to convince myself that all was well with Powell, and that the dots I had seen on his trail were antelopes or wild horses, the less I was able to assure myself. Since we had entered the territory, we had not seen a hostile Indian, yet we had therefore become careless in the extreme, and were wont to ridicule the stories we had heard of the great numbers of these vicious marauders that were supposed to haunt the trails, taking their toll in lives and torture of every white party which fell into their merciless clutches. I detect a faint bit of racism in this story about the Deep South. Powell, I knew, was well armed and further an experienced Indian fighter, but I too had lived and fought for years among the Sioux? Let me try not to butcher the name. Sioux? Okay, yeah, Cioux. It's Sioux. Okay, I'll take your word for that. Lived and fought for years among the Sioux in the north, and I knew that his chances were small against a party of cunning trailing Apaches. Finally, I could endure the suspense no longer, and, arming myself with my 2 Colt revolvers and a carbine, I strapped 2 belts of cartridges about me and, catching my saddle horse, started down the trail taken by Powell in the morning. As soon as I reached comparatively level ground, I urged my mount into a canter and continued this, where the going permitted, until close upon dusk I discovered the point where the other tracks joined those of Powell. They were the tracks of unshod ponies, 3 of them, and the ponies had been galloping. I followed rapidly until, darkness shutting down, I was forced to await the rising of the moon, and given an opportunity to speculate on the question of the wisdom of my chase. Possibly I had conjured up impossible dangers, like some nervous old housewife, and when I should catch up with Powell, would get a good laugh for my pains. However, I am not prone to sensitiveness, and the following of a sense of duty, wherever it may lead, has always been a kind of fetish. It's fetish with me throughout my life. I don't know what fetish means, but it's close to fetish, except it's a C instead of an S. Which may amount for the honors bestowed upon me by 3 republics and the decorations and friendships of an old and powerful emperor and several lesser kings in whose service my sword has been read many a time. About 9 o'clock the moon was sufficiently bright for me to proceed on my way, and I had no difficulty in following the trail at a fast walk. And in some places at a brisk trot until, about midnight, I reached the waterhole where Powell had expected to camp. I came upon the spot unexpectedly, finding it entirely deserted, with no signs of having been recently occupied as a camp. I was interested to note that the tracks of the pursuing horsemen, for such as I was now convinced they must be, continued after Powell with only a brief stop at the hole for water, and always at the same rate of speed as his. I was positive now that the trailers were Apaches, and that they wished to capture Powell alive for the fiendish pleasure of the torture. So I urged my horses onward at a most dangerous pace, hoping against hope that I would catch up with the red rascals before they attacked him. Further speculation was suddenly cut short by the faint report of 2 shots far ahead of me. I knew that Powell would need me now, if ever, and I instantly urged my horse to his topmost speed up the narrow and difficult mountain trail. I had forged ahead for perhaps a mile or more without hearing further sounds, when the trail suddenly debouched into a small, open plateau near the summit of the pass. I had passed through a narrow, overhanging gorge just before entering suddenly upon this tableland, and the sight which met my eyes filled me with consternation and dismay. How long have I been ignoring the missing French fry? I'm glad we found you. Welcome to the channel. The missing French fry. Aren't you just always in the bottom of the bag, though? That's where I normally find the missing French fries. That's a normal thing, I think, yes. Thank you for finding me. I don't know, bloody. Normally, the French fry that gets found gets eaten too. So there's that. It's a bit of a double-edged sword. You're in the couch cushions, so you're safe. You're fine. No, I won't eat you. Damn. You might want to watch out for the kittens, though. They do like French fries. Well, Gwen does. Maybe is sworn off of them, apparently. Yeah, Gwen, if she can reach, and she will dig for them. She doesn't care how long you've been there, probably. The little stretch of level land was white with Indian teepees, and there were probably 1,000 red warriors clustered around some object near the center of the camp. Oh, that's a lot. Their attention was so wholly riveted to this point of interest that they did not notice me, and I easily could have turned back into the dark recesses of the gorge and made my escape with perfect safety. The fact, however, that this thought did not occur to me until the following day removes any possible right to a claim to heroism which the narration of this episode might possibly otherwise entitle me. Yeah, they look like they want to eat my soul. No, just your flesh. I do not believe that I am made of the stuff which constitutes heroes, because in all of the hundreds of instances that my voluntary acts have placed me face to face with death, I cannot recall a single one where any alternative step to that I took occurred to me until many hours later. My mind is evidently so constituted that I am subconsciously forced into a path of duty without recourse to tiresome mental processes. However that may be, I have never regretted that cowardice is not optional with me. Yes, quake. In this instance, I was, of course, positive that Powell was the center of attraction, but whether I thought or acted first, I do not know. But within an instant, from the moment the scene broke upon my view, I had whipped out my revolvers and was charging down upon the entire army of warriors, shooting rapidly and whooping at the top of my lungs. "You are an idiot, sir. You said thousands. You have 3 weapons and 2 extra magazines." Single-handed, I could not have pursued better tactics, for the red men, convinced by sudden surprise that not less than a regiment of regulars was upon them, turning and fled in every direction for their bows, arrows, and rifles. The view which their hurried routing disclosed filled me with apprehension and with rage. Under the clear rays of the Arizona moon lay Powell, his body fairly bristling with the hostile arrows of the braves. That he was already dead, I could not but be convinced, and yet I would have saved his body from mutilation at the hands of the Apaches as quickly as I would have saved the man himself from death. Riding close to him, I reached down from the saddle, and grasping his cartridge belt, drew him up across the withers of my mount. A backward glance convinced me that to return by the way I had come would be more hazardous than to continue across the plateau. So, putting spurs to my poor beast, I made a dash for the opening to the pass, which I could distinguish on the far side of the tableland. The Indians had by this time discovered that I was alone, and I was pursued with imprecations, arrows, and rifle balls. Here's the thing. You are now on a horse, and as was Powell, who then got chased down and killed by these people in their territory. And now you are riding on your horse with an extra person across your horse and are now running away from the same people. This person is not smart. The fact that it is difficult to aim anything but imprecations accurately by moonlight, that they were upset by the sudden and unexpected manner of my advent, and that I was a rather rapidly moving target, saved me from the various deadly projectiles of the enemy and permitted me to reach the shadows of the surrounding peaks before an orderly pursuit could be organized. Yeah, no, he is a badass. A normal reckless male, yeah, for sure. My horse was traveling practically unguided, as I knew that I had probably less knowledge of the exact location of the trail to the pass than he, and thus it happened that he entered a defile which led to the summit of the range and not to the pass which I had hoped would carry me to the valley and to safety. It is probable, however, that to this fact I owe my life, and the remarkable experiences and adventures which befell me during the following 10 years. So he's a lucky son of a bitch, I guess. My first knowledge that I was on the wrong trail came when I heard the yells of the pursuing savages suddenly grow fainter and fainter far off to my left. I knew then that they had passed to the left of the jagged rock formation at the edge of the plateau, to the right of which my horse had borne me and the body of Powell. I drew rein on a little level promontory overlooking the trail below and to my left, and saw the party of pursuing savages disappearing around the point of a neighboring peak. I knew the Indians would soon discover that they were on the wrong trail, and that the search for me would be renewed in the right direction as soon as they located my tracks. I had gone but a short distance further when what seemed to be an excellent trail opened up around the face of a high cliff. The trail was level and quite broad and led upward and in the general direction I wished to go. The cliff arose for several hundred feet on my right, and on my left was an equal and nearly perpendicular drop to the bottom of a rocky ravine. I had followed this trail for perhaps 100 yards when a sharp turn to the right brought me to the mouth of a large cave. The opening was about 4 feet in height and 3 to 4 feet wide, and at this opening the trail ended. It was now morning, and with the customary lack of dawn which is a startling characteristic of Arizona, it had become daylight almost without warning. Dismounting, I laid Powell upon the ground, but the most painstaking examination failed to reveal the faintest spark of life. I forced water from my canteen between his dead lips, bathed his face, and rubbed his hands, working over him continuously for the better part of an hour in the face of the fact that I knew him to be dead. I was very fond of Powell. He was thoroughly a man in every respect, a polished southern gentleman, a staunch and true friend, and it was with a feeling of the deepest grief that I finally gave up my crude endeavors at resuscitation. Leaving Powell's body where it lay on the ledge, I crept into the cave to reconnoiter. I found a large chamber, possibly 100 feet in diameter and 30 or 40 feet in height, a smooth and well-worn floor, and many other evidences that the cave had, at some remote period, been inhabited. The back of the cave was so lost in dense shadow that I could not distinguish whether there were openings into other apartments or not. As I was continuing my examination, I commenced to feel a pleasant drowsiness creeping over me, which I attributed to the fatigue of my long and strenuous ride, and the reaction from the excitement of the fight and the pursuit. I felt comparatively safe in my present location, as I knew that one man could defend the trail to the cave against an army. Yeah, until you run out of ammunition, maybe. I soon became so drowsy that I could scarcely resist the strong desire to throw myself on the floor of the cave for a few moments' rest, but I knew that this would never do, as it would mean certain death at the hands of my red friends, who might be upon me at any moment. With an effort, I started towards the opening of the cave, only to reel drunkenly against the side wall, and from there slip prone upon the floor. I muted, yeah, sorry. I got cleared my throat, and I guess I failed to unmute. I was just saying this chapter seems to have a lot of the more open racism of the past from the period that this is coming from. So I just want to say sorry to anybody who is affected by that in a negative fashion. I'll take a little sip. We're probably reading for about another hour here. Chapter 2, The Escape of the Dead. A sense of delicious dreaminess overcame me. My muscles relaxed, and I was on the point of giving way to my desire to sleep when the sound of approaching horses reached my ears. I attempted to spring to my feet, but was horrified to discover that my muscles refused to respond to my will. I was now thoroughly awake, but was unable to move a muscle as though turned to stone. It was then, for the first time, that I noticed a slight vapor filling the cave. It was extremely tenuous and only noticeable against the opening which led to daylight. There also came to my nostrils a faintly pungent odor, and I could only assume that I had been overcome by some poisonous gas. But why I should retain my mental faculties and yet be unable to move, I could not fathom. I lay facing the opening of the cave, and where I could see the short stretch of trail which lay between the cave and the turn of the cliff around which the trail led. The noise of the approaching horses had ceased, and I judged the Indians were creeping stealthily upon me along the little ledge which led to my living tomb. I remembered that I hoped they would make short work of me, as I did not particularly relish the thought of the innumerable things they might do to me if the spirit prompted them. I had not long to wait before a stealthy sound apprised me of their nearness. And then a war bonnet, painted, streaked face was thrust cautiously around the shoulder of the cliff, and savage eyes looked into mine. That he could see me in the dim light of the cave, I was sure, for the early morning sun was falling full upon me through the opening. The fellow, instead of approaching, merely stood and stared, his eyes bulging and his jaw dropped. And then another savage face appeared, and a third and fourth and fifth, craning their necks over their shoulders of their fellows whom they could not pass upon the narrow ledge. Each face was the picture of awe and fear, but for what reason I did not know. Nor did I learn until 10 years later that there were still other braves behind those who regarded me was apparent from the fact that the leaders passed back whispered word to those behind them. Suddenly a low but distinct moaning sound issued from the recesses of the cave behind me, and as it reached the ears of the Indians, they turned and fled in terror, panic-stricken. So frantic were their efforts to escape from the unseen thing behind me that one of the braves was hurled headlong from the cliff to the rocks below. Their wild cries echoed in the canyon for a short time, and then all was still once more. The sound which had frightened them was not repeated, but it had been sufficient as it was to start me speculating on the possible horror which lurked in the shadows at my back. Fear is a relative term, and so I could only measure my feelings at that time by what I had experienced in the previous positions of danger and by those that I had passed through since. But I can say without shame that if the sensations I endured during the next few minutes were fear, then may God help the coward, for cowardice is of a surety its own punishment. Oh man, that's an attitude. Oh, that's a bad attitude. But I know where it comes from. To be held paralyzed with one's back towards some horrible and unknown danger, from the very sound of which the ferocious Apache warriors turn in wild stampede as a flock of sheep would madly flee from a pack of wolves, seems to me the last word in fearsome predicaments for a man who had ever been used to fighting for his life with all the energy of a powerful physique. There's a lot of words there. Several times I thought I heard faint sounds behind me, as if somebody moving cautiously, but eventually even these ceased, and I was left to the contemplation of my position without interruption. I could but vaguely conjecture the cause of my paralysis, and my only hope lay in that it might pass off as suddenly as it had fallen upon me. Late in the afternoon, my horse, which had been standing with dragging rein before the cave, started slowly down the trail, evidently in search of food and water, and I was left alone, with my mysterious, unknown companion and the dead body of my friend, which lay just within my range of vision upon the ledge where I had placed it in the early morning. From then until possibly midnight, all was silence. The silence of the dead. Then suddenly, the awful moan of the morning broke upon my startled ears, and there came again from the black shadows the sound of a moving thing, and a faint rustling as of dead leaves. The shock to my already overstrained nervous system was terrible in the extreme, and with a superhuman effort I strove to break my awful bonds. It was an effort of the mind, of the will, of the nerves, not muscular, for I could not move even so much as my little finger, but nonetheless mighty for all that. And then something gave. There was a momentary feeling of nausea, a sharp click as if the snapping of a steel wire, and I stood with my back against the wall of the cave facing my unknown foe. Yep, mind over matter, folks, that's all that matters. And bootstraps, something about bootstraps, yes. And then the moonlight flooded the cave, and there before me lay my own body as it had been lying all these hours, with the eyes staring toward the open ledge and the hands resting limply upon the ground. I looked first at my lifeless clay there upon the floor of the cave, and then down at myself in utter bewilderment. For there I lay clothed, and yet here I stood but naked as at the minute of my birth. Mind over body in this case. The transition had been so sudden and so unexpected that it left me for a moment forgetful of aught else than my strange metamorphosis. My first thought was, is this then death? Have I indeed passed over forever into that other life? But I could not well believe this, as I could feel my heart pounding against my ribs from the exertion of my efforts to release myself from the anesthesis from which had held me. My breath was coming in quick, short gasps. Cold sweat stood out from every pore of my body, and the ancient experiment of pinching revealed the fact that I was anything other than a wraith. Again, I was suddenly recalled to my immediate surroundings by a repetition of the weird moan from the depths of the cave. Naked and unarmed as I was, I had no desire to face the unseen thing which menaced me. My revolvers were strapped to my lifeless body, which, for some unfathomable reason, I could not bring myself to touch. My carbine was in its boot, strapped to my saddle, and as my horse had wandered off, I was left without means of defense. My only alternative seemed to lie in flight, and my decision was crystallized by a recurrence of the rustling sound from the thing which now seemed, in the darkness of the cave, to my distorted imagination, to be creeping stealthily upon me. Unable longer to resist the temptation to escape this horrible place, I leaped quickly through the opening into the starlight of a clear Arizona night. The crisp, fresh mountain air outside the cave acted as an immediate tonic, and I felt new life and new courage coursing through me. Pausing upon the brink of the ledge, I upbraided myself for what now seemed me wholly unwarranted apprehension. I reasoned with myself that I had lain helpless for many hours within the cave, yet nothing had molested me, and my better judgment, when permitted the direction of clear and logical reasoning, convinced me that the noises I had heard must have resulted from purely natural and harmless causes, and probably the conformation of the cave was such that a slight breeze had caused the sounds I heard. I decided to investigate, but first I lifted my head and filled my lungs with the pure, invigorating night air of the mountains. As I did so, I saw stretching far below me the beautiful vista of rocky gorge and level, cacti-studded flat wrought by the moonlight into a miracle of soft splendor and wondrous enchantment. What's not the streamer's fault? Hello, damn it, Dale. Are you talking about the rules? Is it the rules? Which rule is that? It's probably the first one, I bet, right? Of course, I have to go to the channel page. Yes. The answer, right, is strictly yes. That's right. Rule number 1, it's not the streamer's fault. Was not the streamer's fault? Yes. So the rules, like when I developed the rules for the channel, it was, there are a lot of people who have very detailed rules, right? Especially a little while ago. I think this was more of this happened a bit more before, where you had like paragraphs and paragraphs of rules and guidelines, and we do this, and we don't do that, and here's like subsections, especially in Discord. I heard, like, a lot of it was in Discord, or reflected there. I wanted a list of rules that were common sense. This is also, I'll take advantage of the fact that this is in addition to the TOS and community guidelines, of course, right? You don't need to repeat TOS and community guidelines, so take advantage of that fact. So yeah, what I want is not the streamer's fault. If you have a problem with this channel, it's not the streamer's fault. Yeah, aside from TOS and community guidelines, for some reason those are two separate things, but they're both enforceable. It's also a bit tongue-in-cheek, of course. It like, I want to be lighthearted too. The following rules are really more important. Like be kind and respectful. Like, if someone needs that explained to them, they're probably looking for a loophole, in which case, maybe this is not the best fit for our channel for them. No trauma or venting, keep it lighthearted. English only, because I don't speak other languages. I have no moderation in other languages, so I can't reasonably ensure that the conversation in my channel is appropriate. There are inappropriate conversations that you can have on Twitch, which can get you banned. And streamers responsible for what chat talks about, right? So no spoilers or backseating. And in this case, we get into things that are like, yeah, please no spoilers or backseating unless asked for, right? If I ask you for it, then it's fine. If I give you an exception to a rule like this, that's fine. No advertising or solicitation. This is going into like the view bots and stuff, right? And the artists to come in and say, hey, you want to see all my work? No spamming, right? 'Cause no one likes spamming. I don't want to see the same word said 400 times in a row. It's other people have things to say too. And mature audiences only. So they're kind of like, maturity is probably, I like that term better than 18 plus. Like technicalities are probably, it means 18 plus. But if you're a mature person and you can hold a mature conversation, you are welcome here. If you come in here and you're only going to be childish or silly or ridiculous or immature, that takes away from most of the vibes of being mature. That doesn't mean you can't be mature and silly and make stupid jokes within some sort of rational context. Do that all the fucking time in a lot of the communities that I join. If you're having fun, then you're probably fine. This is all other people are welcome. So if you violate one of these rules, you're a person who that's not welcome here. Everyone else is. And by all other people, that is intended to be, I want a community which is inclusive of all peoples, right? No matter what demographics you fit into, whether by choice or not, right? Don't be a hateful person. That's what the rules are about. And yeah, they're a little general so that the people who moderate and make judgments upon this stream can be flexible within reason too. I am not a lawyer and I am not going to list out every single loophole. And if you're a person trying to find a loophole, then yeah, I don't really want you in my stream kind of idea, right? And yeah, it's obviously not the streamer's fault. So anyways, yeah, that's actually the first time I've babbled on about my rules. So thank you, Dale, for providing this opportunity. Anyways, I just want a chill, happy stream, right? I think everyone pretty much wants that. Well, a lot of people want that. A lot of people want drama and grief because other reasons. There. Oh, where were we? Confirmation of the caves was such that figures maybe a slight breeze had caused the sounds in the back of the cave. I decided to investigate, but first I lifted my head to fill my lungs with. Oh, we read this too. Right, he's looking at the ground. He is very beautiful, cacti-studded flat, wrought by the moonlight into the miracle of soft splendor and wondrous enchantment. Few Western wonders are more inspiring than the beauties of an Arizona moonlit landscape. The silvered mountains in the distance, the strange lights and shadows upon Hogback and Arroyo. Interesting. And the grotesque details of the stiff yet beautiful cacti form a picture at once enchanting and inspiring, as though one were catching for the first time a glimpse of some dead and forgotten world. So different is it from the aspect of any other spot upon our earth. As I stood thus meditating, I turned my gaze from the landscape to the heavens, where the myriad of stars formed a gorgeous and fitting canopy for the wonders of the earthly scene. My attention was quickly riveted by a large red star close to the distant horizon. As I gazed upon it, I felt the spell of overpowering fascination. It was Mars, the god of war, and for me, the fighting man, it had always held the power of irresistible enchantment. As I gazed at it on that far-gone night, it seemed to call across the unthinkable void, to lure me to it, to draw me as a lodgestone attracts a particle of iron. My longing was beyond the power of opposition. I closed my eyes, stretched out my arms toward the god of my vocation, and felt myself drawn with the suddenness of thought through the trackless immensity of space. There was an instant of extreme cold and utter darkness. And the chapter ended. Chapter 3. My Advent on Mars. I opened my eyes upon a strange and weird landscape. I knew that I was on Mars. Not once did I question either my sanity or my wakefulness. Yeah, chapter ending on cold and abject darkness. Stay tuned for the next 12 seconds. I mean, if we were closer to the end of the hour, that would be a fantastic time to stop. We still have 40 minutes. Dang it. I did not question either my sanity or my wakefulness. I was not asleep. No need for pinching here. My inner consciousness told me as plainly that I was upon Mars as your conscious mind tells you that you are upon Earth. You do not question the fact. Neither did I. Get hacked. Get hacked. Some people's minds tell them they're on a flat Earth. So, how reliable is that? I don't know. A weekly? Maybe. I'm not sure how these chapters been terribly consistent. I haven't really been paying attention. I found myself lying prone upon a bed of yellowish, moss-like vegetation which stretched around me in all directions for interminable miles. I seemed to be laying in a deep, circular basin along the outer verge of which I could distinguish the irregularities of low hills. It was midday. The sun was shining full upon me, and the heat of it was rather intense upon my naked body, yet no greater than would have been true under similar conditions on an Arizona desert. Here and there were slight outcroppings of quartz-bearing rock which glistened in the sunlight, and a little to my left, perhaps 100 yards, appeared a walled enclosure about 4 feet in height. No water and no other vegetation than the moss was in evidence, and as I was somewhat thirsty, I determined to do a little exploring. Incoming cat. Oh, yes. This is approximately half an hour after the kittens have been fed for the night, their final meal, their 4th meal of the day. And Gwen is known for bouncing down here. After that. She's being slow, though. I can't see her yet. Springing to my feet, I received my first Martian surprise. For the effort, which on Earth would have brought me standing upright, carried me into the Martian air to the height of about 3 yards. I alighted softly upon the ground, however without appreciable shock or jar. Now commenced a series of evolutions which even then seemed ludicrous in the extreme. I found that I must learn to walk all over again, as the muscular exertion which carried me easily and safely upon Earth played strange antics with me upon Mars. Yeah, 3 yards, about 3.5 meters. Yeah, it's like it's about 1.5 tall people high. So, yeah. That's, less gravity than the moon has, I think. It doesn't matter. Instead of progressing in a sane and dignified manner, my attempts to walk resulted in a variety of hops which took me clear of the ground a couple of feet each step and landed me sprawling upon my face or back at the end of each second or third hop. My muscles, perfectly attuned and accustomed to the force of gravity on Earth, played mischief with me in attempting for the first time to cope with the lesser gravity and lower air pressure on Mars. So you should also be passing out from lightheadedness. I was determined, however, to explore the low structure which was the only evidence of habitation in sight, and so I hit upon the unique plan of reverting to first principles in locomotion. creeping. I did fairly well at this, and in a few moments had reached the low encircling wall of the enclosure. It was used to mountains? I'm not sure how tall are the mountains in Arizona. There appeared to be no doors or windows upon the side nearest me, but as the wall was but 4 feet high, I cautiously gained my feet and peered over the top upon the strangest sight it had ever been given to me to see. The roof of the enclosure was of solid glass about 4 to 5 inches in thickness, and beneath this were several hundred large eggs, perfectly round and snowy white. The eggs were nearly uniform in size, being about 2½ feet in diameter. Those are big-ass eggs. Hello, Gwen. Hey. Just staring at me. 5 or 6 had already hatched, and the grotesque caricatures which sat blinking in the sunlight were enough to cause me to doubt my sanity. They seemed mostly head, with little scrawny bodies, long necks, and 6 legs, or, as I afterward learned, 2 legs and 2 arms. That still doesn't... Oh, 2 legs, 2 arms, with an intermediary pair of limbs which could be used at will either as arms or legs. Their eyes were set at the extreme sides of their heads, a trifle above the center, and protruded in such a manner that they could be directed either forward or backward, and also independently of each other, thus permitting this queer animal to look in any direction, or in 2 directions at once, without the necessity of turning the head. That would be handy. Every mom would like that, I think. Yeah, I hear you. Are you just gonna hop up? Are you just gonna hop up and interrupt me? Sit in your arm and your arm exhausted. She just gets scritches. I bet she should jump on my butt, on my shoulders. The ears, which were slightly above the eyes and closer together, were small, cup-shaped antennae, protruding not more than an inch on these young specimens. Their noses were longitudinal slits in the center of their faces, midway between their mouths and ears. So larms, oh dear Valena. So larms or arags, heat, or maybe fans. Everyone, I apologize. My wife, she is sick, and is clearly affecting her thinking processes. Yeah. There was no hair on their bodies, which were of a very light yellowish-green color. In the adults, as I was to learn quite soon, this color deepens to an olive green and is darker in the male than in the female. Further, the heads of the adults are not so out of proportion to their bodies as in the case of the young. Slander. That's just witness. I'm like a first-hand witness, that's all. The iris of the eyes is blood red, as in albinos, while the pupil is dark. The eyeball itself is very white, as are the teeth. These latter add a most ferocious appearance to an otherwise fearsome and terrible countenance. As the lower tusks curve upward to sharp points which end about where the eyes of human beings are located. The whiteness of the teeth is not that of ivory, but of the snowiest and most gleaming of china. Against the dark background of their olive skins, their tusks stand out in a most striking manner, making these weapons present in singularly formidable appearance. Most of these details I noted later, for I was given but little time to speculate on the wonders of my new discovery. I had seen that the eggs were in the process of hatching, and as I stood watching the hideous little monsters break from their shells, I failed to note the approach of a score of full-grown Martians from behind me. coming as they did over the soft and soundless moss which covers practically the entire surface of Mars, with the exception of the frozen areas at the poles and the scattered cultivated districts. They might have captured me easily, but their intentions were far more sinister. It was the rattling of the accoutrements of the foremost warrior which warned me. On such a little thing my life hung that I often marvel that I escaped so easily. Had not the rifle of the leader of the party swung from its fastenings beside his saddle in such a way as to strike against the butt of his great metal-shod spear, I should have snuffed out without ever knowing that death was near me. But the little sound caused me to turn, and there upon me, not 10 feet from my breast, was the point of that huge spear. A spear 40 feet long, tipped with gleaming metal and held low at the side of a mounted replica of the little devils I had been watching. But how puny and harmless they now looked beside this huge and terrific incarnation of hate, of vengeance, and of death. The man himself, for such I may call him, was fully 15 feet in height and, on earth, would have weighed some 400 pounds. He sat his mount as we sit on a horse, grasping the animal's barrel with his lower limbs, while the hands of his 2 right arms held his immense spear low at the side of his mount. His 2 left arms were outstretched laterally to help preserve his balance, the thing he rode having neither bridle nor reins of any description for guidance. And his mount, how can earthly words describe it? It towered 10 feet at the shoulder, had 4 legs on either side, a broad, flat tail, larger at the tip than at the root, and which it held straight out behind while running, a gaping mouth which split its head from its snout to its long, massive neck. Its head from its snout to its neck. Wow, that's a big-ass mouth. Like its master, it was entirely devoid of hair, but it was of a dark slate color and exceeding smooth and glossy. Its belly was white, and its legs shaded from the slate of its shoulders and hips to a vivid yellow at the feet. The feet themselves were heavily padded and nailless, which fact had also contributed to the noiselessness of their approach. And in common with the multiplicity of legs, it is a characteristic feature of the fauna of Mars. The highest type of man and one other animal, the only mammal existing on Mars, alone have well-formed nails, and there are absolutely no hooved animals in existence there. Sorry, my brain turned inside out. Hang on. The feet themselves are heavily padded and nailless, which fact had also contributed to the approach, and in common with a multiplicity of legs, is a characteristic feature of the fauna of Mars. The highest type of man and one other animal, the only mammal existing on Mars, alone have well-formed nails, and there are absolutely no hooved animals in existence there. The highest type of man? What's the matter, Gwen? Oh, she wants to play. Hang on. Do we have a bowl somewhere? I got no toys. Where are the toys? Where are the toys? Huh? Where are the toys? Come on. Show me the toys. Yes. Yeah, you want this? Okay. Never mind that I'm streaming. That's fine. Okay. We're just streaming. Don't worry about it. Ready? Want this? My apologies. My cat likes to play fetch. It is her fetch time. Well, she didn't bring the ball back, so we're done playing fetch. All right. One day we'll get a cat cam, I'm sure. Then we'll, dox ourselves. All right, no hooved animals in existence there. Behind this first charging demon trailed 19 others, similar in all respects, but as I learned later, bearing individual characteristics peculiar to themselves. Precisely as no two of us are identical, although we are all cast in a similar mold. This picture, or rather materialized nightmare, which I have described at length, made but one terrible and swift impression upon me as I turned to meet it. Unarmed and naked as I was, the first law of nature manifested itself in the only possible solution of my immediate problem, and that was to get out of the vicinity of the point of the charging spear. Consequently, I gave a very earthly, and at the same time, superhuman leap to reach the top of the Martian incubator, for such I had determined it must be. My effort was crowned with a success which appalled me no less than it seemed to surprise the Martian warriors, for it carried me fully 30 feet into the air and landed me 100 feet from my pursuers and on the opposite side of the enclosure. I alighted upon the soft mass easily and without mishap, and turning saw my enemies lined up along the further wall. Some were surveying me with expressions which I afterward discovered were marked extreme astonishment, and the others were evidently satisfying themselves that I had not molested their young. They were conversing together in low tones and gesticulating and pointing toward me. Their discovery that I had not harmed the little Martians and that I was unarmed must have caused them to look upon me with less ferocity. But, as I was to learn later, the thing which weighed most in my favor was my exhibition of hurtling. While the Martians are immense, their bones are very large and they are muscled only in proportion to the gravitation which they must overcome. The result is that they are infinitely less agile and less powerful in proportion to their weight than an Earthman. And I doubt that were one of them suddenly to be transported to Earth, he could lift his own weight from the ground. In fact, I am convinced that he could not do so. We have a meowing kitty cat. Can you hear the cat? Can you hear Gwen meow on the stream? I can hear her from the hallway through my headset. Not that my headset's playing very much. My feat, then, was as marvelous upon Mars as it would have been upon Earth, and from desiring to annihilate me, they suddenly looked upon me as a wonderful discovery to be captured and exhibited among their fellows. The respite my unexpected agility had given me permitted me to formulate plans for the immediate future and to note more closely the appearance of the warriors. For I could not dissociate these people in my mind from those other warriors who, only the day before, had been pursuing me. Yeah, she's not in the room right now. I noted that each was armed with several other weapons in addition to the huge spear which I have described. The weapon which caused me to decide against an attempt at escape by flight was what was evidently a rifle of some description, which I felt, for some reason, they were peculiarly efficient in handling. Well, if they've grown up with it, that makes sense. These rifles were of a white metal stocked with wood, which I learned later was a very light and intensely hard growth much prized on Mars, and entirely unknown to us denizens of Earth. The metal of the barrel is an alloy composed principally of aluminium and steel, which they have learned to temper to a hardness far exceeding that of the steel with which we are familiar. The author does not know how chemistry works, got it. The weight of these rifles is comparatively little, and with the small caliber, explosive radium projectiles which they use, and the great length of the barrel, they are deadly in the extreme, and at ranges which would be unthinkable on Earth. The theoretic effective radius of this rifle is 300 miles. Damn. But the best they can do in actual service, when equipped with their wireless finders and sighters, is but a trifle over 200 miles. Well, basically worthless. This is quite far enough to imbue me with great respect for the Martian firearm, and some telepathic force must have warned me against an attempt to escape in broad daylight from under the muzzles of 20 of these death-dealing machines. The Martians, after conversing for a short time, turned and rode away in the direction from which they had come, leaving one of their number alone by the enclosure. When they had covered perhaps 200 yards, they halted and turned their mounts toward us, sat watching the warrior by the enclosure. He was the one whose spear I had so nearly transfixed me, and was evidently the leader of the band. As I had noted, they had seemed to have moved to their present position at his direction. When his force had come to a halt, he dismounted, threw down his spear and small arms, and came around the end of the incubator toward me, entirely unarmed and as naked as I, except for the ornaments strapped upon his head, limbs, and breast. When he was within about 50 feet of me, he unclasped an enormous metal armlet, and holding it toward me in the open palm of his hand, addressed me in a clear, resonant voice, but in a language, it is needless to say, I could not understand. He then stopped, as though waiting for my reply, pricking up his antenna-like ears and cocking his strange-looking eyes still further toward me. As the silence became painful, I concluded to hazard a little conversation on my own part, as I had guessed that he was making overtures of peace. The throwing down of his weapons and the withdrawing of his troop before his advance toward me would have signified a peaceful mission anywhere on Earth, so why not then on Mars? Placing my hand over my heart, I bowed low to the Martian and explained to him that while I did not understand his language, his actions spoke for the peace and friendship at the present moment were most dear to my heart. Of course, I might have been a babbling brook for all the intelligence my speech carried to him, but he understood the action with which I immediately followed my words. Stretching my hand toward him, I advanced and took the armlet from his open palm, clasping it about my arm above the elbow, smiled at him, and stood waiting. His wide mouth spread into an answering smile, and locking one of his intermediary arms in mine, we turned and walked back toward his mount. At the same time, he motioned his followers to advance. They started toward us on a wild run, but were checked by a signal from him. Evidently he feared that were I to be really frightened again, I might jump entirely out of his landscape. He exchanged a few words with his men, motioned to me that I would ride behind one of them, and then mounted his own animal. The fellow designated reached down 2 or 3 hands and lifted me up behind him on the glossy black of his mount, where I hung on as best I could by the belts and straps which held the Martian's weapons and ornaments. The entire cavalcade then turned and galloped away toward the range of hills in the distance. Okay, we have about it's 9:45, and this is probably a good stopping point. Just before chapter 4, so we're done. We managed to finish Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and get 3 chapters into a Princess of Mars. That's right. This book has a title. It's an entitled book. Entitlement. Cool. Yes. I think my brain's tired. Sorry. Stream manager. I want a stream manager. Yeah. We will continue this Monday again. So next week, likely a good place to stop. Then, yeah, we have. What are we doing for the rest of this week? We are on Thursday. See, I caught myself. Thursday, not Wednesday. Thursday, we are probably doing Helldivers again. Good old Thursday Helldive. Friday, we are, I think this is the week we collaborate with Queen. So in Space Marine 2, we have patch 12 is being released on Thursday, the Tech Marine patch. And I think the idea is Queen and I will invite members of the community to play the Tech Marine class, and we will support them. We will support them playing it, and then they can make all the mistakes in front of us, and we can learn from their mistakes. And then when we play, we will be like pros. We will know all the gotchas. Yes, exactly. I really hope they patch some of the problems with like the other builds for the servo gun, if nothing else. That would be really nice. Yeah, so we're gonna do that, and then Sunday we play Space Marines again. I don't know if my friends will join me, but at some point I will be starting in on the Tech Marine Prestige progression, or peregrination, as it were. So I'll be doing Tech Marine next. Finally have Sniper behind me. I'm very happy about that. I'm not interested in playing a Sniper anymore, so we will. Horde mode on Sunday? It depends. It depends. It depends. Yep, depends. It's very dependy. For Horde mode, I really want 3 people to join me for a few hours. Probably tactical. I'll save Tech Marine for when I'm finished progressing tactical, I think. It might not be the wisest choice. The hype is going to be about Tech Marine for a while, so. But I want to play. I want to play tactical. Yeah, you're saying. Was I saying tech? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. Tactical. That's probably going to be a problem. Technical. It'd become technical, not Tech Marine or tactical Marine. It'd become technical. Incoming ad break. Oh, no. We're gonna pause that. We're gonna pause that. Yeah. So there you go. That is our plans. Well, let's find us someone to raid, if you please. Raid you please. Okay. This is like the best time to click the stop raids for 1 hour. The worst time to get a raid would be right now. Is there anyone of our reading friends who is still like reading and stuff? There's one person who raided us once. They're not reading, but you know, it could be nice to raid them too. Yeah, we're gonna go raid Coffee. This person I think raided me the other day, and I think I would like to return the favor. Yes. They're playing Pokemon. I know a lot of people like that. I don't know why they like it, but they do, and here we are. So we're gonna do this. Cool. Awesome. Thank you for the raid message, Valena. Okay.